On behalf of the House Democratic Caucus, I want to thank you for being here this afternoon for our weekly press availability. I just have one quick opening comment. Our caucus was thrilled to open our doors and welcome thousands of teachers earlier this week as they came back to the Capitol for the second year in a row to advocate for common sense solutions for public education. They came last year demanding more money for public education and demanding an end to the ridiculous and irresponsible tax cuts that had been passed or that were being discussed at the time. And unfortunately, after it was all said and done last year, they got neither of their demands. They're back again this year asking for more money, asking for a reduction in mandates, and our caucus stands unified. All 29 members of the House Democratic Caucus stand unified with our teachers and our educators to say that not only should we give more resources, but we should give them more local control, and we should find a way to do it this year. And so we were thrilled to see them. We just hope that this year's rally is more fruitful than last year's rally was. We hope that the Republican legislators who were actually in their offices this time to greet them, unlike last year when many were gone and off-site, we hope they listened to what their teachers and their constituents had to say, because what they had to say is truly important. We're at a critical point in public education in Oklahoma, not only in terms of funding, but also in terms of staffing. And we can no longer continue the status quo. We've got to make a change. We've got to do it this year. So we were thrilled to see them. And with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions about anything else that may be on your mind.
What's your assessment of just the general state of the legislature with 1 week until the next deadline comes up? It seems like there's been some things that have passed that probably both parties agree on, like maybe texting, prescription drug monitoring, some criminal justice reform. Would you say so far so good? How would you grade it so far?
I'd say this is one of the most uneventful sessions that I've seen in my 9 years. Matter of fact, I'd say it is without a doubt the most uneventful session. And I think that all stems from the leadership at the top. When Governor Fallin ran for re-election, she basically ran for re-election saying, vote for me because I've been governor for 4 years, or I was lieutenant governor for 12 years, or I was congresswoman for 4 years. There was no real plan. She didn't say, if you re-elect me, we're going to do X, Y, and Z as it pertains to major initiatives. And so when she comes in her first year after her re-election, there seems to be a lack of real direction, real lack of leadership as to any big major initiatives that are supposed to be moving the state forward. We're working hand in hand with the governor to get criminal justice reform done. We're pleased with that, and our caucus has been instrumental in getting some major pieces of legislation passed there. But outside of that, there's really no major discussions taking place when it comes to tax reform, when it comes to true education reform or education funding. It seems like a lot of those big battles either were done in years past, or they're being put off for some other time. And so it's really an uneventful session that has caused us to maybe sing from the same songbook a little more than we might have in the past, because a lot of the legislation that's coming through isn't real controversial.
What are your thoughts on the preemption bills moving through both chambers that would prevent cities and towns from passing local ordinances banning drilling activities?
We have some real questions about it. We don't have an official caucus position on those particular bills, but I think most of my caucus opposed them when they came through. We generally believe that local control is a principle that provides the best form of government for our citizens, and as the science continues to develop on that issue of drilling and fracking in our communities, and tends to show more and more evidence that there may be a direct link between some of the earthquakes and some of the oil and gas activity. As that happens, removing citizens' ability to protect their homes and their property values, removing that from them and placing it up here at the Capitol, sounds to me like it wouldn't be the best public policy.
Well, it seems like the state legislature and a lot of state officials talk a lot about state rights, and in terms of Washington usurping the state's abilities in various areas. And yet when it comes to local rights and smoking, and now we're talking about drilling and some other issues.
Minimum wage.
Minimum wage, right. Does there seem to be a contradiction there?
The contradiction is a nice way to put it. I call it hypocrisy. What you see is the Republican majority, really it's the Republican majority, because the governor agrees with us on smoking. She agrees with us on some other issues, but she was opposed to local control when it came to minimum wage. But you really look at the Republican legislature, who ran on a platform of local control, who ran on a platform of railing against the federal government and any overreach that they might have into the state of Oklahoma, and yet they are quick and more than happy to come in and take away any local control from our cities and municipalities and our counties and consolidate all that power into their hands here at 23rd and Lincoln. That is hypocritical, and it's bad government in our opinion.
How did you vote today on the measure having to do with school teachers and where criminal accusations are filed against them, that it should be reported up to the state board?
My daughter won a contest today, so we were my wife and I were at CC's Pizza today for lunch. That's where we were. So no, I wasn't there, and I don't even know, did that bill pass today? Okay, so that's, I don't.
How would you have voted on that?
I had some serious concerns about it. I mean, you want to do the best you can to protect our local school children, but there are some real due process issues involved in that legislation that as an attorney gave me some real concern.
There are several bills moving through that I wouldn't say are detrimental to the wind industry, but aren't exactly helpful. And then there's several bills moving through that are pro-oil and gas. What are your thoughts? Is the legislature, pitting one industry against the other, or?
Right now, I don't see a big major push within the oil and gas industry to punish the wind industry. There's been those fights in the past. This year, it's really more about a tax credit fight, and whether the chairman of Appropriations and Budget in the House and Senator Macy in the Senate, who's always been loath to support wind tax credits, whether they're going to try to balance the budget on the backs of those particular businesses. Our caucus doesn't have an official position on it yet, but I can tell you that we do not believe it is good public policy to come in and hamper what is a burgeoning industry in the state of Oklahoma as it pertains to the wind industry. So we want to see whatever happens at the end of the session this year be something that is good for not just the state's bottom line, but good for the bottom line of those businesses as well. We don't want to sort of single them out and say that somehow their tax credits are bad when we're giving away hundreds of millions of dollars in tax credits to so many other industries that are, for one reason or another, getting a pass this time around. So we want to see something fair and balanced that comes out of this legislature, and if it's something that's going to unnecessarily and unfairly target the wind industry, my caucus will probably be opposed to it.
Are you hearing anything about the Indian Museum or bond measures in general to refurbish state infrastructure?
Not on the state infrastructure, and I have heard nothing. I haven't visited with the speaker about the cultural center. We're sort of in limbo there. My caucus has said for years we want to see some sort of plan to see what they want to do to complete the project, and it's unfortunate that it's where it is now. It's been eerily quiet this session, and we're waiting on the speaker to take the lead on the issue. And you hear whispers around the Capitol that there may be a solution, and if there is, we want to look at it because we're interested in finding a solution to the problem. So I'd say that I wouldn't say that it's dead for the session just yet, but I'd say it certainly is on life support.
How about the bills having to do with the unclaimed property fund? Are those? Do you think those will advance?
From what I understand and from what I've looked at so far, I hope not. I mean, while we want to do all we can to not overly burden the insurance industry, it's most important that our constituents and their family members have access to the life insurance money that they rightly paid for, that they contractually that they're contractually owed. And I don't want to see an industry come in, use powerful lobbyists, and essentially take money away from the pockets of our family members and constituents, and basically violate and break contracts that they may have signed 20 years ago, 30 years ago, whatever it might be. That's not, in my opinion, good public policy.
Transportation money going to get raided to fill up the $611 million hole?
I hope not. I mean, I've said for the last couple of years, my caucus has said it is an absolute travesty what this Republican legislature has done. They have eroded funding for state government. They've eroded our revenue sources so much so that they are pitting core functions of government against each other. And we should not, the people of Oklahoma should not have to choose between good roads and bridges and good schools for our kids. And so we believe that you should be able to do both. You should be able to pave our roads and bridges appropriately and educate our children and give our teachers the resources they need. And so my caucus believes you need to take that $200 million worth of tax cuts and put those on hold and use that money to pump into public education, and let's make sure our roads and bridges are taken care of as well. It shouldn't have to rob Peter to pay Paul.
What is your position on HJR 1012 pending before Senate rules committee that would put to a vote of the people the right to farm measure?
Yeah, I think most of my caucus supported it when it came through the legislature the first time. In general, I guess, sort of philosophically speaking, we believe that our agricultural roots are such that our farmers and ranchers ought to be able to be good stewards of their land and their crops and their and what they do for a living. And you don't want to see an overly burdensome group from outside the state of Oklahoma come in and try to overly control what they do. And so whether or not that bill is exactly written in its best form or not is something that is yet to be seen. But in theory, in principle, my caucus supports the rights of local farmers and ranchers to farm their land as they see fit.
The Humane Society is taking out television ads in Tulsa and Oklahoma City opposing it. They're calling it the Right to Harm bill. And they're saying it will prevent the legislature from imposing regulations on things, and it would result in increased pollution and harm to animals and whatnot. Is that a valid concern?
Well, from my caucus's position and from some of my guys who I lean on for those agriculturalists, they don't see it that way. They don't see the issue as that black and white. You bet. Thank you all very much.